How you doing, everybody, and welcome to Jack's Meat Shack. It's been a long time since I've done a long form YouTube video, so let's get going with this amazing 6 kilo Boston butt from Dingley-Dell. The plan is to show you how to smoke one of these Boston butts until it gets to the point where it becomes pulled pork. So we want to get it to 93 degrees Celsius or above, and we want the pork to fall off the bone. This is a full Boston butt, so a full shoulder of pork. It's got the bone inside it, and what we're going to do to start is just trim some of this really hard exterior fat off, because that's not going to render down in the cooking process. What you'll need for this is a nice sharp boning knife. I'll pick a boning knife because it's got a nice little bit of bend in it, so you can get round the kind of edges and things like that. But what we really want to do is remove this big layer of hard fat. So let me bring you in a little bit closer so you can see what we're doing. I'm preparing the pork shoulder now by taking off all the hard fat which is covering the exterior. Fat is good, but we want it in the meat, not on top. So any kind of hard pieces that just won't render down during the smoke will be trimmed off. It doesn't mean that this is going to be any less succulent or juicy. It just means that we won't get kind of big patches of unrendered fat in our finished pork. By all means, leave a couple of centimetres of fat on top. This will do no harm, and it will actually be quite nice in the finished product. And this is all the intermuscular fat I'm talking about that will render through. And if we look here, this is our blade bone, this is our shoulder bone here that runs through it all. So we don't need to do too much trimming on the underneath. This process is called scruffing. So I'm taking my nice sharp knife and I'm actually scoring into the fat cap. This creates loads of different crevices which will allow our rub and smoke to basically penetrate deeper into the pork. You know, like when you do a gammon at Christmas, you're just doing a diamond kind of cut, so you've got loads of crevices and, yeah, places for rub to set. Now we've scruffed the surface of the meat, we're going to go on with some French's mustard as a binder. Now, binder is the terminology we use for a sauce or an oil that we put onto the meat to allow the rub to stick to it better. So we're going to go in with some French's mustard. And you might notice during this cook, I've basically got a glove on my left hand that I'm going to use to basically be my dirty hand. So when I like touch the meat or rub the sauce over it, use this hand. This way, this hand remains free to touch condiments, so you don't get any cross-contamination. Now we go on with our seasoning. This is a sriracha seasoning, really nice, loads of flavour, nice bit of spice to it, and it gives a really good bark because it's quite coarse. There's some nice flecks of chili in there. So we're going to go on with this now. Good liberal coating. I would say we need about 100 grams of seasoning for one shoulder of pork. So this is a 320 gram pot, so probably use the rest of this pot, I would imagine. Always try and season from a height. This basically will get you nice coverage and not clumps of seasoning all over your pork. This is a sriracha dry rub. I'm going to use probably about 100 grams. It seems like a lot, but you've got a big old wedge of pork here that needs seasoning, and you want to be able to taste the rub in your finished product. So whatever rub you buy, you're going to need at least 100 grams minimum, I would say, to cover the pork in its entirety. Don't just think of it as a flat surface as well. You need to stand it up, do the edges, do the rear, get a good coverage all over. And so we don't waste any of that excess rub that we've got on the tray, we're going to put 2 gloves on, pick the pork up and just rub it in whatever's left on the surface of the tray. But this is looking and smelling good already. We're cooking on the Kamado Joe Connected Joe. I'm getting in the slow roller and I'm going to set the grill grate in the top position with some cherry wood for smoke. It's time to get our pork onto the Kamado Joe connected, and basically all we need to do now is let it smoke for a good 3 to 4 hours until the bark has formed. I'm not going to worry too much about temperature at this point. I'm not using any probes or anything like that. I'm just going to basically smoke it until it starts to look nice. Nice bark has formed, the skin's formed a nice crust on it, and then we'll think about probing it, because really you don't want to wrap this until it reaches about 70 degrees Celsius. So we'll get it in now, loads of smoke, let it take on loads of flavour, and then we'll cover the rest of the cook a bit later on. Woo! We're 3 hours in now, so let's have a look at the bark and see how the pork is progressing. Just checked the pork and it's where I want it to be in terms of colour. The bark is nice and crispy, and temperature wise we're probing at around 60 to 65 degrees Celsius. So soon what's going to happen is we're going to hit the stall. The stall is where the meat will start to sweat out moisture and not actually go up in temperature. You might decide to crank the grill up to kind of combat this, but this will just dry out the meat. What we're going to do is take the pork shoulder off and we're going to wrap it in butcher's paper. This will help push through the stall and keep all the moisture within the meat. So when it comes to the shredding, we're not going to lose any of that moisture, and we should have a lovely silky pulled pork. Time to wrap. Butcher's paper ready. So we go down with 2 layers of our butcher's paper, and top tip, I've got these magnets that basically magnetize the paper. Whoops. Magnetize the paper to the table, which is really handy when it's windy. Perfect. Again, it's just going to overlap ever so slightly. And using our massive spatula, we're going to get the pork off, put it in the center and wrap it up like a birthday present. Can just about see now, but the pork has just probed the high 90s, 93, 94 in some spots, and it's probing like butter, which means when you put the thermometer into the pork, there's very little resistance, which means all the intermuscular fat is broken down, and it's time to be rested in a cool box for a couple of hours before we shred it. Let's get it in the cool box now. British summertime, raining, but we managed to get the pork smoked, wrapped, cooked and rested in the Petromax cool box. Now it's just be a case of getting it out and shredding it. So we'll do that now and I will show you how it should look. If we've done it right, the shoulder blade should just fall out of the meat and the meat should just shred apart really easily. Resting it in the cool box is really important because it allows basically all the fat and liquid to be reabsorbed back into the meat, so the pulled pork is not dry. So let's get it out now and I'll show you how we've done. I mean, look at the bark on that, that's beautiful. Now we're going to go in with our hands because it's cool to the touch and basically shred it. We can remove that shoulder bone without very very much resistance. And then it's just a case of shredding it. You can use what they call like forks to do this, or your hands. I find using hands is better because you can kind of then pick through and take out any bits of the pork that you've missed. So sometimes you'll have like a big like vein of fat running through it, some sinew, you know, you can remove the bits that aren't pleasurable to eat. So there we have it, pulled pork. Weather's a bit crap, but nice fall apart meat of the pulled pork. I like shredding it with my hands because as you go through it, you can pick out some of the bits we missed in the trim. Some bits are inside the meat, so you can't actually get to them. So anything like hard and sinewy, you can pick out with your hands. And now you've got an amazing base. So you can either have it as it is, just taste the smoke, taste the seasoning, or put some barbecue sauce with it and yeah, use it in burgers, baps, you name it. Really, really versatile, can feed a crowd as well. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll be doing plenty more of these long form content videos. See you next time.